Good evening, friends. I welcome you all on behalf of ConsultEase on today's webinar. Myself, CA Archana Jain, and I have CA Navjot Singh with me. So we will be deliberating on the topic of classification today. And so why classification is important, or what exactly the classification is all about. So we will be understanding the concept of classification, the importance of classification, the relevance of classification, and also the jurisprudence that is tagged along with this HSN classification. So what is the basic importance, or why do we exactly need any kind of classification? So the basic and the foremost important criteria for the reason why we are looking for any kind of classification is that, yes, because in case we have to put some kind of taxation, or some kind of rate has to be fixed, or some kind of duty has to be imposed, so we have to properly classify where that particular commodity or particular item will be falling under, so that we end up in paying the correct classification. And this is not just only with respect to the taxation part or the imposition of duty. How that particular product is known, how is the test, end use test is there, then how to determine the proper classification is there. So all these important aspects, and the main reason is, apart from these, that we should not be committing any kind of error. That means, the what does exactly it means is that when you are classifying something, so you have an intent that you end up in paying correct tax, so that tomorrow the authorities may not come to you that, okay, this is the contravention of the provision, you should have classified under this category and you have wrongly classified it at this category, or you were paying some higher rate of duty or taxes, whether instead of some lower rate that may have been applicable to your product or to your services, whatever you are into. So these are the important aspect of the classification. That means that how that product has to be classified, the description, the common parlance test, or the end use test. These are the criteria. Then secondly, the importance of classification. And third part, we will be taking care of the jurisprudence, or the various judicial pronouncement that has been taken care of the various rules of the interpretation, that how you have to classify these goods or services. So I'll hand over the podium to Navjot to carry it forward and to set the stage for all the woes that we have to see, or what are the hindrances, or what are the difficulties that we are facing in today's world with respect to the HSN classification. Over to you, Navjot.
Hello, sir. You are not audible.
Now I am I?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I was saying thanks to Archana ji for the brief introduction and then a brief outlay of the main issue, the classification, which we are going to face in upcoming time, because till today we have done as per our understanding. Now department will be coming to you as per their understanding. So you have applied your mind till now. Now it's time to see their mindset, because classification is something which we have been seeing from past 30 to 40 years, because in customs, in central excise, few of the matters took a lot of time to get settled, or to reach the at finality. So in today's session, we'll be very concise about the topic of classification. We will not be talking about the taxability of any activity, or whether any activity is supply or something. That all those parts are set aside. We'll be very concise to the topic classification only. Now we have divided into three parts. Like, first one is importance of correct classification, and then there are some key judgments which are which are taken from custom and excise regime. And then the third part is how to deal with the communications or notices which you are receiving, or which you might be receiving in future in GST. So let's start with the importance of correct classification. So first of all, what I have observed about taxation, when I read this wonderful quote about the taxation, so that you don't pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay the tax at whatsoever rate at it is, but somehow the government takes the taxes. They make their laws like that. They somehow introduce the provisions like that. They take away the exemptions or whatsoever it is through maybe judicial means or through adjudication orders or circulars notifications. They take taxes. So now, what is classification? Now, what do you understand by classification? So classification is something, the term classification is defined as systematic arrangement in groups or categories according to established criteria. 2-3 words are keywords which are being used in this the general meaning of classification, because this is a term which is not defined in the act or in any act, but this is a general meaning of this. Like when you have systematically arranged something in groups or categories according to a established criteria. What do you mean by established criteria? That a criteria which is to be seen by everyone, like which would be a base to set out those rules about those arrangements and groups. And under the given concept, the arrangement of varied items is into mutually exclusive but related classes as well. So somehow in classifications, you might be seeing that there are like multiple headings, there are multiple rates, there are multiple codes, there are multiple HSNs. So all those HSNs are mutually exclusive. They might be related. Like if you talk about a particular heading, if I'm talking about for example cashew, so everyone must be thinking in their mind that only one type of cashew is there. But if you see the tariff heading of customs, you will find like almost 20 to 30 subheadings. Like there are various types of products sometimes. So all those products are mutually exclusive but they are related. So that's how classification works. So under the indirect tax regime prevalent, which is across the globe, including the India, the classification of various items which are the subject matter of tax, be it goods or services, is an essential and integral part of the whole levy and collection mechanism. So because why I say that, when we talk about taxation, then we talk about how to charge it, how to collect it, how to levy it. So we will be reading in GST 3 sections. The section through which an activity will be treated as supply, then a section through which Parliament have enacted this act to collect the levy and to collect the taxes from the public, and then the collection mechanism is also different. But all these items are somehow very importantly connected to a very important factor, that is classification. That how and at what rate a product will be charged, or what rate should be there at which the product will be charged. Now, it's very important from the taxpayer's perspective and tax collector's perspective as well to have a definite class of group and under which subject matters can be divided. Now, why classification was needed? Suppose if you are saying that my product is to be charged at 5% and department is also saying 5%. So you must have, you must be reading this, the whole tariff from somewhere. So you need I would say a list in which there are a list of items from a taxpayer perspective as well and from a tax collector perspective as well. The primary intention of classifying them is to determine whether or not the same would be incumbent by the levy of these taxes, and if so, under which category of tax liability would arise. So primary intention is what? Primary intention is what? How to classify them and how to determine that whether there will be levy, like as per that particular activity will be treated as supply of goods, or maybe it might be supply of services. So how that tax liability would arise from the classification. So the importance, why the importance is there? So importance is related to leviability of tax and to determine whether a supply is goods or service, and to determine the exemptions as well, because obviously when you see the exemption list of maybe they might be giving you the exemption as per the tariff codes as well, like this particular code will be exempted from the levy of the tax. So apart from that, the main thing is rate of tax. What would be the rate of tax? Then there will be obviously a standardization and avoiding differentiation. So if we all are reading one tariff, I would say one document in which all these services or rates are stated there. So it will be a standardization of all the rates. So though I should not say this because if you see the classification things, then there might be a lot of confusions as well when you read the tariffs, when you read the headings. We'll go through that as well, how to deal with that. So in India, if you say why tax structure is important, because in India you see there are multiple rates. When GST was introduced, it was introduced with the motto of one nation, one tax. It should have been one. It was never that one nation, one rate tax. There are like multiple rates. If you see, there are five. There is a 5% tax slab as well. There is a 12% tax slab as well, 18% and 28%. So then it becomes very important then, because nobody in the industry wants to fall under the highest tax bracket. I would say. So there is a when we talk about multiple tax structure systems, so there is always a certain kind of arbitrage which is created between taxpayer and tax collector for a classification of items. So that have been always a problem, because if you see, there is a political influence sometime as well, because few of the parties might be influencing the main government to classify certain kind of goods under a lower tax category, and it might be the government who must be thinking that a product which is a very which is used by many people, like which is used in a huge volume, should be taxed at a high or maybe low character, because they will be thinking from a perspective that they want to collect the tax, because in a country like India, tax structure and tax collections is the major source of revenue. So now let's come to the part which is problematic. Classification disputes are always have been there. So there are around 11,200 cases which are still pending before Supreme Court of India, which are pure classification issues, which are like they are coming from central excise, service tax, VAT regime. So like we have a I would say a long journey with respect to litigative things when we talk about classification. So what are the steps through which I will be identifying the rate, or I would say the classification, the correct classification of my goods? So it will start with the definition of goods and services. Why I say that? Because when we are seeing a document, we just can't mess it up. Like everything will be arranged in a very, I would say, beautiful manner. So if there are headings for goods separately, there are headings for services separately, then there is another part is activities listed in Schedule 2. Schedule 2 is basically an exit to CGST Act. So in which all the activities are segregated, or basically the classification has given that whether a particular activity is supply of goods or a supply of service. So you can take a help from that schedule as well. Third one is activities listed in Schedule 3. Like when does a supply will not be when does an activity will not be a supply? So all these factors are very important when you classify something, because if I'm talking about if you say if you're providing any service which is getting fall under Schedule 3, so which is not even a supply, so you don't need to see the classification as well, because if there is no supply, then there is obviously no way to collect the tax on the same. So another thing is identification of composite and mixed supplies. So composite and mixed supplies in itself is a broader way to see the things, because what you see is sometimes 2-3 services are bundled together, and 2-3 goods are bundled together. There are multiple, I would say, the arrangements in or businesses are like that. They are providing services which are charged at a single rate, but which will be including multiple goods, services. So it's sort of a bundle. So how to classify those kind of services? Because as per Section 8 of GST Act, the charging mechanism for composite and mixed supply is very different. So that's why it becomes very important. Then identification of HSN code from the rate notification. Then it comes to the what is actually written in that notification, which is a basically rate notification. In that document which I'm talking about, that is a rate notification in which all those rates are given. So how to identify those rates? Now, then applicability of principles of interpretation applicable on Custom Tariff Act, now made applicable White Notification 1/2017. So when GST was introduced, the rates were given. So then for ease of reference, they said that all those principle of interpretations which you have been seeing in Custom Tariff Act, like what are those principle of interpretation, that we'll be discussing in detail, but I'm just giving a brief about it. That suppose if you're reading a document, so how to read it? There must be some rules to read that document, because if you want to standardize a document, there must be a specific rule for everything. So applicability of principle of interpretation will be always there. Now, understanding the service code tariff applicable on the services in accordance with Annexure to Notification 11/2017. Then we'll have to understand this service code as well, because as I said, in that particular rate notification, the rates on applicable on goods and services are bifurcated differently. So how to see those? So let's start with the definition of goods and services. So why it is important? Because if you don't know that whether a supply is a supply of goods or services, you can't go further. So this is a basic step, that first you will have to identify that supply is a supply of goods or services. So what is goods? Goods, the definition of goods is defined in CGST Act in section 2 subsection 52. Goods means every kind of movable property and other than money and securities, but includes actionable claims, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of land which are agreed to be served before supply or under a contract of supply. That is a goods. Like if we take a outlaw from this definition, obviously the definition of goods, if you see from the Sales of Goods or Contract Act, differently from Sale of Goods Act. So if we'll go into the jurisprudence of the word, we'll somehow lost into that. But if I just take the outlaw, it means somehow a movable property. Okay. And what is the definition of services given? Services means anything other than goods, money and security, but includes activities relating to the use of money and its conversion by cash or by any other mode from one form, currency or denomination, to another form, currency or denomination, for which a separate consideration is charged. So services means, they said it very specifically, that service means anything other than goods. Okay, so you can say that if you have identified a supply is a supply of goods, then obviously it gets out of the ambit of the definition of service. Now, why this segregation is important? Because if you read the GST law, the rules are different from in respect of goods and services. If you see the provisions of place of supply, time of supply, or valuation, those are certain kind of different when you talk about goods and services. So that's why the segregation is very important. Now schedule 2, which says that classification of activities as supply of goods or supply of services. It means it segregates activities, like there are certain activities which might have created confusion. So government have said that they have given few of the activities by themselves, saying that this particular activity is supply of goods or supply of service. Now, where does this come from? There is a section 7(1)(d) of CGST Act which says that certain activities have been treated as supply of goods and services under the Schedule 2 appended to the Acts. Now, it is very, I would say, interesting to see that Schedule 2 do not classify any article as goods or services. Rather, it consists of certain activities which can be either treated as supply of goods. Now, this is very important. When we are talking about Schedule 2, it will not say that this particular item is a good or service. It's not about a particular item. It's about the supply of that particular item. The supply of that particular item is a good or not, or service or not. So, that segregation is not, I would say, it's not identifying the characteristic of that particular item, but rather than it's defining the characteristic of that particular activity. Now, there can be a situation where an item might neither be a goods or services, but its supply is treated as supply of service. Now, if you take the example of transactions in land and building, so those things they are neither goods nor they are services, but for the sake of I would say the ease of like for taking those transactions in the within the ambit of GST, they have said it like though these are either not goods and services, but they will be treated as supply of service by virtue of Schedule 2. So hence Schedule 2 should be read in isolation, since it is the activity but not the item, which is the subject matter of tax. Now let's come to the another aspect of Schedule 2, that all the activities in relation to goods which are constituted within the definition of supply cannot be classified as supply of goods always. In some cases, activities in relation to goods can also be treated as supply of service. Suppose to take the example of lease. In lease, what you do in when you transfer the right in any good, what you do, you give away that goods to someone. If I am selling goods to someone, obviously this is a supply of goods. But if you are transferring the right to use that particular good to someone, though you are transferring that good to another person, but this is a supply of service. So you have to segregate these two things differently. Like, what is the subject matter of tax? That is particular activity. But the item is also important in that. Now, let's understand in a better manner. Activities in relation to neither goods or services can still be treated as supply of service. As I took the example of lease of immovable property, that immovable property is neither a good nor a service. Still, if you supply anything related to the immovable property, it will be a supply of service. So for example, if you're leasing out the immovable property, though you are giving away anything which is not a good, not a service, but still it is a supply of service. Deemed supply of goods and services. If you see the Schedule 1, there are 4 items which are written over there, that permanent disposal of goods and supply between distinct person, or supply between agent and principal. So in those cases, those goods, even those are made without consideration but still treated as supply. So you can take the reference of Schedule 1 as well to identify the characteristic of any particular activity. Then the composite supply and its treatment. As I said, that you have to see that whether a bundle of services or goods and services is a composite supply, or it is a mixed supply. Then let's talk about declared supplies influenced from erstwhile service tax provisions. Now you can take the influence of there was I would say a mechanism to identify the services in pre-GST regime, in service tax regime. There was a particular section for that in which they have mentioned all these services, that these are the declared services. So you can take the reference of that particular provisions as well to identify whether a activity is a supply of service or supply of goods. Now, in contrast to Schedule 2, drawing power of which is drawing power from Section 272A, certain activities have been specified under Schedule 3, which are neither goods and services, as I said. Now, hence the given schedule is also co-activity, not co-item. Since GST is leviable on supply of goods or services, even if any of the items as specified in Schedule 3 is either goods or services, by deeming fiction, activity undertaken on it under Schedule 3 shall constitute as if no supply has taken place in all the terms of GST Act. So as I said, when we talk about levy of tax, so it starts from the identification of activity. I would say the identification whether that activity is a supply in itself or not. So if that particular activity is not even a supply as per Schedule 3, which speaks about certain activities which are not treated as supply, which are not within the ambit of Section 7. So when it is not supply, then there is no question of the classification as well. Then identification of composite and mixed supplies. Now, if you see in this today's dynamic world, there are like multiple businesses. They are supplying services. They are giving they're providing activities like certain like that. They are designed in a way that it will be very difficult to identify that whether it is a supply, whether it is a composite supply. When we talk about in which there is a principal supply and other supplies are ancillary to that main supply. But when we talk about the mixed supply concept, in mixed supply, there are multiple products which are bundled together, which might otherwise have been sold, separately as well. Like for example, if you have seen in a confectionery shop, there are multiple chocolates which are bundled together on any occasion, but those chocolates can be sold differently as well. So that's a mixed supply. Those are not a naturally bundled goods, I would say. Similarly, when I'm talking about composite supply, in which there is always a predominant, or I would say there is a principal supply, then all the other services or goods included in that particular supply will be the ancillary activities, or I would say ancillary supplies to that. Suppose if you are selling goods to someone and you are providing the transportation service as well along with that, so your primary supply was supplying of good service, supply of goods. Your transportation service was the ancillary to that. So your predominant supply will be supply of goods. So that's how we identify, and I would say that's how we take the reference of classification from that particular activity. Once we identify that whether it is a composite supply or mixed supply, because as I said that in section 8 there is a different mechanism for taxing for like both of the things. Now, if you see supply of two or more goods together, like machine with packing, or if you say storage and transportation, wall painting with paint, machine with installation, or you say exchange of currency with sale of currency, sale of bakery item with vegetables, and sale of lubricant with petrol, sale of furniture with the sale of building. All these examples are the basic ones, because if you see in the real world, if you see, you must have observed a few of the businesses of the clients in which they are providing a service in which we get also confused that whether he's providing a goods or whether he's providing a services. So you'll have to identify the characteristic of that particular supply, whether that is a composite supply or mixed supply. So it all started with identification of an activity or giving a cover of supply to an activity. It starts from that. Then that particular activity is provided as a bundled, or are there like 2-3 supplies together given all together? Then you'll see, then you'll check whether it is a composite supply or mixed supply. Then you see the whether like all these activities are even included in the definition of supply or not. So these are the steps when you proceed to the classification part. There is a very important judgment of Mathuram Agarwal versus State of Madhya Pradesh. It was held by the Supreme Court of India in that the statute should clearly and unambiguously convey the 3 components of tax levy. The first one is subject of the tax. Second one is who is liable to pay the tax. Third one is at the rate which the tax is to be paid. Now, if there is any ambiguity regarding any of these ingredients in the taxing statute, then there is no tax in law. Then it is for the legislature to do the needful in the matter. They might have said that, if you are having a confusion regarding any of the 3 main components, like what was the subject matter of tax, who was liable to pay the tax, and what is the rate on the tax. If there is any ambiguity, so government or legislature should come up with a clarification that what should be done in this. Now there is another important judgment of it is related to composite and mixed supply, because GST is not a new law. It is not drafted by India like altogether a new law. It is obviously inspired from various countries' GST law which are already in force. So in this judgment, Card Protection Plan versus Commissioner of Customs, this judgment is from European Court of Justice. What are the key points? 2 or more acts to be regarded as single supply if they are so closely linked that they will form a single indivisible economic supply. Where a transaction comprises a bundle of features and acts, then whether it constitutes one single supply or 2 or more supplies should be determined taking into account the facts and circumstances of the case. There may be a single price where some elements constitute the principal supply while other are ancillary. And further, if the 2 or more elements or acts supplied by a taxable person to the customer are so closely linked, so and that they form objectively a single indivisible economic supply, which is it would be artificial to split, then all those items would be constitute a single supply. So the primary crux of this judgment is basically that if two items are linked to each other in a way that they cannot be provided differently, like suppose if there is no supply of goods, what would you do with the supply transportation service? Obviously transportation service is an ancillary to supply of goods. So some services are like that they are single indivisible economic supply. They are naturally bundled like that. They are provided like that to the industry. The customer is having perception about that particular supply, that this supply will be made in this manner only. So then only you say that I'm paying single price for this, and this will be a main uh, in that particular transaction. The taxation would be on the at the rate at which the predominant supply is there. Like if I took example of supply of goods, so in that the rate would be charged at the rate which is applicable on the particular goods which are being transported. So if you see the classification in good GST Act, when GST law was introduced, they issued a notification on 28th of June 2017, just before 2-3 days back, before the formal introduction, in which they divided the rates in 6 schedules. So schedule 1 talks about 2.5%. It means 2.5% CGST part. So 2.5 of the SGST part. So rate is 5% in total. Then there is a 12% threshold. Then there is a 18%. Then there is a 28%. Then there is a 3%, and then there is a 0.0125% schedule as well. So these are the schedules. As I said, that there are multiple tax slabs. There are multiple. The tax tariffs are divided in multiple tax rates. Now, two very important, and why they have given it, because drafting the interpretation rules altogether new, it would be very difficult for government to defeat the purpose of standardization. So if they wanted to standardize, obviously they wanted to standardize the litigation as well related or attached to the classification. So that's why they said that for the purpose of this notification, they said it is the explanation given in this particular notification in which all the rates are being given. They said that tariff item subheading chapter shall mean respectively a tariff item subheading and chapter as specified in the first schedule of Custom Tariff Act. So why they have said it? That because when we read the custom law, there is a levy which comes from the section 12 of Customs Act, and section 12 is connected with the Custom Tariff Act, in which all the rates are being given, all the section, all the chapters are given, all the explanatory notes, chapter notes, section heading, everything is given there. So they have said that all these tariff items subheading which you are reading in this notification, these are the same, or you would say these are kind of inspired from the Custom Tariff Act only. So whenever you have any confusion, or if you want to read any tariff item, so you see, if you see the tariff of GST and if you see the tariff of customs, you will find that all the headings are different. Most of the headings and chapters are different. Similar in nature only. Then second thing they said in this notification, that the rules for interpretation of first schedule of the Custom Tariff Act, including the sections and chapter notes and the general explanatory notes of first schedule, shall, so far as may be, applied to the interpretation of this notification. So whatsoever interpretational rules which are given in the custom law shall be applicable mutatis mutandis in to the GST law as well. So then let's talk about how to see and how to read the tariff, because till now we have come to know that we have to identify whether activity was good, whether activity was service, and then after identifying, after coming to a conclusion that yes, this is my supply, this is the kind of service which I provide, then let's come to the main that document in which all those rates are given. Now, how to read it? There are certain, obviously this is a standardized document, so this is designed in a way, this is designed in an international manner, I would say, because Customs, in customs, what you see is you are importing goods from another country. So obviously all those items, all those goods are designed or classified like that it should be equally be read in that particular country as well. So if you are importing something from America, or you would say Canada, if that particular tariff, if suppose there is a machine you are importing from Canada, so whatsoever tariff you have opted for that machine, same tariff would be applicable in Canadian country as well. So that's how they have designed it. They have made a standardized document which is applicable to the globe. We will talk about that HSN culture, HSN nomination. So the importance is all this tariff which is adopted by Indian law is applicable or somehow similar and adopted by most of the countries. So how to read it? Now this is divided in sections. Now what is section? Section is a grouping of number of chapters. In section there are different chapters. So it is divided in chapters which codify a particular class of goods. Each section is related to a broad class of goods. Now if there is a section 1 which speaks about the items which are related to live animals, then there is a section 4 which is related to prepared foodstuffs and beverages, and then there is a section 12 which speaks about footwear, headgear, umbrella, article of human hair. So these are just example. So they have made the sections. In particular section there will be different chapters. Why they have done it? Why they are trying to I would say grouping all these items or goods? Because to avoid any sort of ambiguity. Because if I want to see something related to live animals, I'll certainly go to the section. Then in section I would say to which chapter it falls. So next step is to identify the chapter. Chapter and sub-chapters contain a particular class of goods. For instance, the section on prepared foodstuffs, beverages covered chapters like chapter 16 is there, preparation of meat, fish, etc. Chapter 17 is there, which speaks about sugar and sugar confectionery. Chapter 18 is there, cocoa and cocoa preparation. So once it's just like reading a book. Suppose if you're reading a book, if you remember your class 12th book, it was if it was divided in 5 sections. Okay, so in first section there are poems, in second sections there are stories, in third section there are essays. So first see what you want to read. If you want to read the essay, then you will go to that particular section of essay, section 3. Then in section 3 of which author you want to see read the author, then you read the chapter. Then it's just like a book. Then there is a heading. When you know that I want to read this particular author's essay, then you will see the headings of his work, like how many essays he have written, that particular author. So heading is ultimately I would say the final thing that yes, my particular product falls under this heading, or I wanted to have a look on this particular item or the piece of essay which that particular author have written. Just like in this taxation means it would be the same, that each chapter is further divided into various headings and subheadings depending upon the different type of goods covered within the chapter. Now for instance, there is example when we talk about sugar. So what do you think? That sugar is obviously of like many types. So if there is a heading of sugar, then in sugar there are various headings such as cane or beet sugar. It is other sugars or molasses like refining of sugar, or it is other sugar confectionery. So there might be a byproducts when you manufacture sugar or when you manufacture any product. So there might be a byproducts, there might be a part of that product. So all those things are covered in the heading. Now it is very important to see that first you go to the particular section, then you scale down your search to that particular chapter. But if you see the designing of all these headings, so you will find a certain order in these. What is that order? that in a particular heading, it is designed in a way, it starts from a parts. It starts from the raw material which is used to make that item to which the particular heading belongs to. So if we're talking about machinery, so if you'll see the heading of machinery, it will start from the raw material of that machinery and it will conclude to the fully manufactured goods. So it is designed somehow like that. Not all the chapters are like that, but somehow most of the chapters are like that only. That it starts from the raw material, then semi-finished goods, obviously, then there is a conclusion with fully manufactured goods. Like, for example, if we are talking about if you have imported any machinery and there are like 5-6 components of that machinery which are used in that particular machinery, which gives the essential character to that machinery. So if you go to the section in which the machinery products are there, then you'll go to the specific heading in which that particular machinery which you want to see is there. Then in that machinery, you see either you have imported the parts of that machinery, or you have imported a semi designed machinery, or you have imported the fully manufactured machinery. So there will be various kind of headings. So those headings are defined in a manner that it starts from raw material and conclude with the fully manufactured. Now, reliance is not to be placed solely on section or chapter titles to classify the product therein. So you never classify any product totally based on the section and chapter. Because what happened when we talk about, like, for example, beverage, if we want to classify, suppose flavored milk. Now flavored milk, some of you might be thinking that flavored milk is a milk only with sugar in it or flavor in it. But from a different perspective, someone say that it is a beverage. It's not a milk anymore. It have become flavored milk. Now it is a beverage now. It is classifying under the category of beverage. So that's why it's it becomes very important that you cannot classify a product just by seeing the section or chapter. Just the example which I took of that book of 12th book, that if you want to read the essay and if you just can't go to that particular essay by just reading the section or chapter. If you want to go that particular essay, you will have to go through a certain process. That first you see the section, then you go to the chapter, then you go to the heading, then there is a subheading. There might be a subheading to the subheading as well. So that's how the tariff is designed. Now, once the search has been restricted to a specific chapter, each chapter begins with a certain notes that are to be interpreted along with various headings in the chapter. Now you see, when we are talking about a particular heading, there might be a usage of certain words in that particular heading. Now, what is the definition of that particular word which are given in a particular heading? The definition of all those words, not necessarily, but sometimes it is given in the heading in itself, that they starts with chapter notes, or they start with the section heading in which they say that these words are being used in this heading and meaning of these words are this. And sometimes they also explain the HSN as well, that this particular item will not be included in this particular tariff, though this somehow relate to it, but we are saying it very specifically that this item will not be included. Suppose if you have imported a certain machinery, according to you it falls under, suppose, tariff 873235. Suppose, I'm just taking an example. But when you go to that particular heading, it is written there that if you have imported this machinery, this will not get fallen under this particular tariff. So obviously, as I said, that there are rules to read that particular tariff. So there are certain definitions as well of few of the words which are given in that particular heading. Now this is the structure in which all these tariffs are coded. Suppose if we are talking about 8-digit tariff which Indian tariff system follows, 2008-1100. So this is the tariff HSN, you would say the HSN code, the 8-digit HSN code. How it is designed: first 4 digits are the heading, next 2 digits are the subheading, and last 2 digits speaks about a tariff item, that particular tariff item. Now, what is now next thing, which is obviously I would say the when you will read the tariff after this session, you who have not read the tariff act yet, so you just see that there are few things which are used. There is a single dash. It consists that it is a group of goods. Suppose there is a heading, and then there are subgroups. So to identify and to ease of reference, they have given a symbol. Single dash is there, which says that it is a group of goods. Then there is a double dash, which says that it's a subgroup to that single dash. After a single dash, there will be a double dash. It means to a particular item which is classified in like 5-6 parts. Okay, so 5-6 dash would be there, single dash would be there. Now what is this double dash? Suppose if a particular item or subheading is also divided into 3 parts. Suppose if you're talking about a machinery is of 6 to 7 types, then a particular machinery is also, there is a 9 type of that particular machinery. So there is a heading, then there is a subheading, then there is a sub classification. So up to triple digits are used, or triple dashes are used in that particular tariff item. I'll show you how it is to be seen. So there is an important judgment of Mumbai Sestat as well, in one of the judgment 2017, in which they said that if you want to fall a particular item before a tariff item which is given in the double dash in a subgroup, so to get fall in that subgroup, you must be identify in a main group as well. So if you want to say that I fall under this particular subheading, so to fall under that particular subheading, you must be following the rules of that heading as well. You just can't say that this is my item. So as I said, you'll have to process in a flow only. Like there is a set standard. First you read the section, then you read the heading, then you read the chapter, then you go to that particular heading, subheading, then there might be a sub classification to that subheading as well. This is the example. Now this is the tariff module in which it is how it is given. So first thing is tariff item, second thing is description of goods, third is unit, fourth one is rate of duty, and fifth one is rate of duty preferential. Now let's talk about the main ingredients only. Now this is the heading 2008. This is the heading in which it is said that fruits, nuts and other edible parts of plants otherwise prepared or preserved, whether or not containing added sugar or other sweetening matter or spirit, not elsewhere specified or included. This is what they have written. They have said that if your goods fall under this heading, come to this heading. Then you read further in this. Suppose this is a very broader, if you see, this is a very broader thing, like fruit, nuts. They have not specified fruit, nuts. What sort of fruit, nuts? So then you go to the subheading. Subheading is what? 2008-11-00. It speaks about ground nuts. So there is a rate of 30% on that. Now you see there is a single dash. It means this fruit, nuts, and this heading is subdivided in further category which speaks about nuts, groundnuts and other seeds. Now that this particular heading is also further classifying groundnuts differently. So you might be having an idea from this that if they want to classify any item, tariff items, they'll keep on excluding that item from a subgroup. Suppose if they wanted to classify this groundnut, or if they wanted to tax this groundnut at the same rate of other nuts and groundnuts, so they have not given it specifically. They should have given it within the heading only, or maybe subheading only. But why this specific tariff item is needed? For first one is the clarity of that particular item. Like if you want to classify a groundnut, you have to show your goods like that, or I would say treat your goods like that, or prove your goods like that they are groundnuts only, because there is a 30% tax rate. Now you see under the same heading there will be different rates. So now you see the importance of heading and subheading. Now if you see that there is a heading of 2008 and 19 which speaks about other and including mixtures. Now what it is, if you see the subheading of 2008 1910 which speaks about cashew nuts, roasted, salted and salted. Now you see there was a nuts here as well. Now you say you want to classify cashew in ground nuts. No, it cannot be done because it is specifically given in a sub classification to this particular heading and this particular subheading. So you have to come under this tariff for cashew nuts, roasted, salted. Then there is a sub classification further as well, like there is a separate item as well, which is other roasted nuts and seeds, which are not cashew nuts. Like if there is any other nuts apart from cashew nuts which is not fallen and in any of these categories will get fallen in this residual, or maybe you say this category, which would be taxed at 30%. So how this works, it starts with the heading, then there is a subheading of 2 digits, then there is a tariff item, last 2 digits are tariff item. That's how 8 digits of classification works. Now if you have seen that there is a unit as well, like kgs, or it might be in liters, because if you're talking about groundnuts, so obviously it will be in kgs. If you're talking about oil, it would be in liter. If we are talking about any item in like machinery, so that cannot be in kgs, that cannot be in liters. So that particular item will be in unit, like 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, like that's how. So that's how it is. Now there are certain goods which have been given a specific tariff, like they have said it, like what's in, like whatsoever your goods or services are, but if you get fallen under these particular tariffs, so there are specific rates for this. Like if you all goods imported under project imports, if you like importing multiple imports under a project, so there is a particular tariff heading 9801. If you are importing all lab chemicals in packs which are in less than 500 grams or 500 milliliter, these are specifically mentioned in 9802. All baggage of passenger of member of crew 9803. Goods for personal use imported by post and air 9804. So they have given a specific heading as well for few of the items. Now sections and heading, each section and chapter under the tariff is accompanied by the notes known as section notes and chapter notes. As I said, when we were reading this, let me just go through that slide again. Like when we were reading about this particular fruit, nuts and all. Now if you want to understand what do you mean by nuts, like what is the meaning of nuts, so it might be a possibility that there is a definition of nuts which would have been given under this chapter, like if this is a chapter 20 or chapter 2, whatever it is. So in that particular chapter there will be a section and heading notes as well. Like when you will start reading it, before coming to those rates and notification, you will see that there are certain definitions which are given. So all those definition and section notes are very important. These are given at the beginning of section or chapter respectively, which governs the concerned section and chapter as the case may be. In the case of section notes, they are applicable to each chapter which is the part of specific section of tariff. So there might be section notes. Section note means, as I said, it all starts from section. So there might be section notes that these kind of items, these kind of tariffs are getting fallen under this particular section. Then it comes to the chapter. There might be chapter notes as well, that the definition of particular items, or I would say particular words which are used in that particular chapter, those are given differently in chapter notes. So these notes are nothing but the definition of the words or the certain meanings or the certain clarifications related to that particular chapter. Now, since these notes are the part of tariff itself, these have full statutory backing. Obviously, if these notes are given on the heading of that particular section and chapter, so these are equally important. These are having statutory backing as well, because various courts and various judicial pronouncements are there when they wanted to classify something. So they went to the section notes and the chapter notes as well. They read those chapter notes and then they come to the conclusion of a classification of any particular product. So these section and chapter note have the overriding force over the respective heading and subheading. So whatsoever written in your heading or subheading doesn't matter, but if it is specifically carved out from the chapter note, then you cannot classify that particular product in that subheading. As I said, if you imported some machinery from outside India and if you know that this machinery is in this machinery should be classified under this particular tariff item, but somehow there is a chapter note which is given in that heading that if you import this machinery, this will not be covered under this chapter. Then even if the characteristics of machineries are similar to that tariff item, but it will not be classified. So somehow that section and tariff note, section and chapter note is having some sort of overriding force. Like whatsoever written in your heading, subheading doesn't matter, but if it is something is given in chapter note and section note, it will be written in and it will be given effect like that. To support this, there are two judgments which I want to mention. One is in Fenner, India, in which Supreme Court said that tariff schedule would be determined on the terms of headings and any relevant section or chapter notes. So the Supreme Court also had said that when you read the tariff schedule, you will always read the heading and relevant section and chapter notes. Now there is another judgment as well. It was held that section notes and chapter notes, being the statutory in nature, have precedence over functional test of commercial parlance for the purpose of classification. So somehow, sometimes when we do classify products, and if we are like having difficulty to find out like under which category it should fall, so we do the functional test, that how this product functions, how this service function. So on the basis of that functional test, we come to the conclusion of classification. But if something is mentioned in section note and chapter notes, which gives somehow precedence, or you say, though your machine functions in a different way, but there is something which is given in chapter note. I'm taking an example. If you imported a cutting machine from outside India, or like if you're talking about from GST perspective, so if you're selling a cutting machine in India, and according to you, it should fall under a like XYZ category of heading, but it is given in that particular chapter or section that cutting machine will not be included in this heading, then even though the characteristics of that machine are somehow like cutting machine, but it will not be classified under that particular category. Now there is another judgment as well in Gujarat State Fertilizer, in which it was said that the interpretation of exemption notification also, the Supreme Court said that the principle, the chapter note of the chapter of tariff referred to in which notification have to be read as part and parcel of exemption notification. So it might also be a possible. Suppose there is an exemption notification for that cutting machine, okay, and there is a definition for the cutting machine for which that particular notification applies is also given in that notification. That cutting machine should be like this, cutting machine should be of this much of weight. So that particular definition which is given in the notification will have the effect. You will have to read that definition as a part of classification only. In that particular definition which is given in exemption notification will work as chapter note. That is important because you wanted to avail certain sort of benefit from that particular category. So even though that particular exclusion is not given in the Tariff Act, but it is given in the exemption notification, then that exemption notification takes the color of chapter note or the section heading. Now, similar stand the similar sort of stand has been taken in the New Holland tractor. This was a Sestet judgment. Two was a Sestet judgment in which the view of this judgment was taken. Now, what are these codes? How does it works? So the HSN explanatory notes cannot override and dilute the language under the CTA. So there are certain HSN classification or HSN explanatory notes as well, like which explains about HSN, like what sort of products are getting the included in this particular HSN. So there are explanatory notes to that HSN, but those explanatory notes cannot override or dilute the language under the Custom Tariff Act. You will see there are three things. First one was section heading, chapter notes. Those are important, but HSN explanatory notes are something else. So these notes, these explanatory notes will not override and the language of the CTA. So whatsoever written in the HSN explanatory note, you can refer it, but this will not be binding upon you. Now, there is a judgment of Woodcraft Products in which a Supreme Court, in which it was held that as per the statement of objects and reason of Central Excise Tariff Bill 1985, the new tariff has been introduced based on the HSN to reduce classification disputes. Now, as I said, HSN is kind of a mechanism through which the tariff codes are designed in all around the world. Suppose there is a organization like World Trade Organization or maybe World Custom Organization, which somehow discuss from various countries, and they have come to one conclusion that this is a document which will be referred by everyone in every country, whomsoever is associated with World Custom Organization or World Trade Organization. So basically, HSN was designed in a way to provide a standardized format for each and every country. So thus, if you are having any doubt, HSN is a safe guide for ascertaining the true meaning of any expression used in the Act, unless there is an expressly different intention indicated in the tariff itself. Why it is said that? I said only codes are taken, not the taxes. Suppose if you are importing or if you are selling cutting machine in India and there is a tax rate of 18%, only that particular code will be the similar in another country, in America. If in America you are selling out any cutting machine, the code will be similar. That code is called as HSN code. But it might not be the possibility that rate is also same. So they have taken only the codification system from HSN system. HSN system is designed by an international organization. Just keep that in your mind. And they have taken just the codes from it, not the I would say the tax rates as well. So whenever you have any doubt related to any product, so it might be a possibility that it can get clear from that HSN code, which is the main document from which all these tariff acts and all these rate notifications are being designed. So you can take the benefit of that. You can download that from the World Custom Organization site. You will see that if you'll match those international HSNs with our Custom Tariff Act, so it is, most of them are similar, but there are some HSN explanatory notes as well which are given, which I just said that they cannot dilute the language, because it might be possibility that in India machine works differently and machine is being used for two ways, but in abroad it might not be the possibility. So that's why it is important. So you can just take the reference of HSN. Now the HSN explanatory notes, there is a judgment of there was judgment of Sestet in 2008 which was affirmed by Supreme Court, in which it was said that the HSN explanatory notes have been held to have overriding effect over trade parlance in the case of Health India Laboratories. So they HSN explanatory notes cannot take the override the CTA, the main tariff act, but it can override the trade parlance. Why I say that? Because sometimes something is written very specifically in the act. So no matter you use that product in any manner, but that particular product was specifically mentioned in that particular tariff, so you will not take the benefit of trade parlance. So Supreme Court said that when HSN explanatory note will be having overriding effect over the trade parlance. Rest, if you read the judgment if you read the full text of the judgment, you'll get the better sense. At the time, at the same time, in the case of New India Industries, there was another judgment as well. It was held that HSN explanatory notes have persuasive value but do not have any statutory authority. This is a contradictory judgment to the judgment above judgment. So sometimes all these Supreme Court judgments are very difficult to concise in 3 words, because there are certain facts are involved which would be very difficult for me to explain within this constant of time. So, but I would say the brief of that judgment was that HSN explanatory notes are containing some sort of value, but these are not having any statutory authority. If you remember, I just said a few minutes back that section notes and section heading and chapter notes have that statutory backing, but HSN explanatory notes doesn't have statutory authority. Furthermore, in the case of Consolidated Coin Private Limited, the court observed that US custom rulings may also be considered for classification dispute, since US and India follow the HSN based classification. So this particular line or this particular reference we have seen in many SESTAT and High Court or Supreme Court judgments, because in particular, sorry, I just mentioned that High Court judgments, all these classification items were dealt by the Supreme Court directly. So what these SESTATs and Supreme Court have said in many of the judgments, that you can take the reference of US HSN as well, or maybe US tariff as well, because somehow they are also following the same structure of codifying all these tariff acts. Now there is a important, I would say, landmark judgment by 3-member bench of Supreme Court in Bico Laboratories. The burden of proof that a product is classifiable under a particular tariff head is on the department and must be discharged by the proving that it is so understood by the consumer of product in common parlance. Why this judgment is important? Now, when I say I am a taxpayer, suppose, and if you are from department and department comes to me that your product is not this product and your product doesn't fall under this category in which you are paying tax on particular supply, at that time you will say, prove it to me that it doesn't fall under this particular product. So the burden of proof, burden of proof that a product is classifiable under a particular tariff head is on the department and must be discharged by proving that it is so understood the consumer product in a common parlance. Okay, so department will be discharging its duty to prove that. Apart from it, let's come to the classification of service. Now for services, like if you have read about HSN, like I was talking about that in that rate notification also, it is given that rates would be inspired or will, I would say the same apply as mutatis mutandis from the custom tariff act. But if you read the customs, there is no concept of service in customs. So for services, what would be the classification? So there is no principle for classification of services have been prescribed under the notification for rate or under law for the services. The principle of classification as applicable for goods cannot be applied on services. Obviously, the principles of classification which are applicable on goods, they cannot at all applied on the services. So a clue can be taken from the erstwhile service tax provisions and also from CPC, which is nothing but Central Product Classification by United Nations Statistical Commission, whose list of services is akin to the Indian, I would say, the services list. So they have taken that list of service codes from that particular list. It is being adopted by US. So it is just like Indian, I would say the goods classification only. The structure is like that, but they have taken the uh, you would say the copy paste from United Nations Central Product Classification System for the services. So after that, it is being given that what is CPC. So CPC was nothing but the central product classification constitute a complete product classification covering all goods and services. So basically CPC was including all the classification, including goods and services. But India have taken only the you would say the queue for only classification of the services only, because now next important part, which is I would say the as I said, as I started with they have taken the uh, they have inspired from the custom tariff act for the sake of identifying HSN codes, but there are certain rules of interpretation as well, that how you will be reading those HSN codes, and what are the problems and how the disputes are there in related to the interpretation. So Archana man will be taking from this part. Ma'am, your voice is not coming. Not really.
Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you, Navjot. You have really set the stage perfectly fine, and the way you have deliberated, you have very in detail. You have explained each and every aspect of the HSN classification, how the chapter has to be read, how section note has to be referred. You have rightly explained the subdivisions like the subheading, the colon, the semicolon, the single dash, the double dash. Everything has been taken care of. So, I'll just try to complement your presentation by going further, that okay, we have seen till now, we have seen that how a particular good has to be classified when there are sections, there are chapters, there are heading, there are subheading. Now, there may be certain cases or there may be certain scenarios when the things are not pretty clear. So then we have to go and we have to refer to the rules of interpretation, that how these rules, what the rule says, that how you have to interpret the various provisions or various situation that comes across, and how you have to interpret it when there is certain some kind of ambiguity, or there are some kind of clash between the two HSN chapter notes or two heading notes, or there are some product that you may find that they have they are able to, you are able to manage them under two different chapters or under two different headings. So how to resolve these kind of issues whenever you come across, and how to resolve the issues when there are certain things that they are not in complete mode, or they are in skd or ckd format. So how to make them classify under a particular heading. So for all these kind of situations, when which are not of normal nature, or when these things are not easily classified, then we have to take the resort of rules of interpretation. So what did the rule of interpretation says? So first of all, I'll just try to brief up. I know Navjot has explained it in a very lucid manner, but I'll just try to help you out, and I just try to brief it up. That first thing that we have to the step one is that we have to identify the which particular good you need to classify. Then second is where you have to fit in. The tariff schedule has to be read, whether it is a raw material or it is a finished product. Then whether there is a possibility of general rule of interpretation, and if not, then we have to classify how we have to further classify it. Then if there is a certain classification, then how to subheading has to be decided, whether it has to be classified by virtue of 4 digit, 6 digit, or 8 digit classification has to be there. And then relevant description of the heading in GST rate schedule also, because our ultimate aim is that today in indirect tax regime we have two tax regime, one is custom and one is GST. So GST does not have its own tariff schedule, it has borrowed its schedule from the custom itself. So whenever there is an ambiguity, we have to go and get back, or we have to refer to the SETA itself. Then the logical step is whether particular section is applicable or not. In case that section is not applicable, then you don't need to look further to the chapters also, because in case your product has been excluded by virtue of section itself, then you don't have to go and look into the further chapters that are classified under that particular section itself. And if in case section is applicable but that particular chapter is not applicable, then there is no need to look further for the headings. So these way you have to manage the things, and these way you have to see how you have to take the help of the section notes, the chapter notes, the headings, and the subheadings. So first and foremost, the rule one, this is the by default. So what is this rule is saying? That classification to be determined per heading. So whenever you have to classify something, rule one is the thumb rule. That is, it is by default rule. So what it says is, if in case you are able to classify your goods under a specific section, chapter, or subchapter, then there is no requirement to move further to any of the rules. So that means what we can conclude is, rule one says that in the absence of your classification by virtue of rule 1, then only you have to take the results of the other rule or the preceding rules. And if you are able to classify your good, that in any of the chapter notes or in any of the classification that has been prescribed, then there is no further requirement to do or to do a research of further rules. That means we can say that in case of there is some kind of ambiguity, or there is some kind of difficulty, or there is some kind of, let's say, we are confused at whether to classify it in under this particular chapter or in some other chapter, then only we have to take the resort of rules. And if there is no ambiguity, there is a clear cut description of your particular good, then you have to resort to rule 1 only. That means classification is to be the first tested on the basis of rule 1. Only if rule 1 fails, or if rule 1 does not resolve the issue, the other rules are to be looked at sequentially. So this has been said in even in case of CCE versus simplex mills. It says that rule 1 gives primacy to the section and chapter notes along with the term of headings. They should be first applied. If there is no clear picture emerging, then only we have to take the result of the subsequent rules. Otherwise, there is no such requirement. So in case there is no ambiguity, there is no need to go further go and dig down to the various rules of interpretation. Then comes rule 2. Suppose my product is I'm not able to classify by virtue of rule 1, then I'll go to rule 2. So we have to go sequentially. I cannot directly jump to some other rule. First rule 1, then rule 2. So rule 2 has two parts. 2A says the classification of incomplete or unassembled goods. We all know that the goods can be in any process, in any form, either in raw material, in semi-finished product, or even in CKD or SKD. So what they say is, in case the good is incomplete or in unassembled formation, then how you have to classify? So any reference in the heading to article shall be taken to include a reference to that article incomplete or unfinished. That means it should have the basic structure or essential feature of that particular good, whether that particular good as of now is incomplete or is in unassembled format, but still it has the essential characteristics of that complete good, then it has to be classified along with the same HSN that pertains to the complete good. So this is rule 2A. LML Limited said that it was held that a scooter body without engine is to be classified as scooter, because the essential characteristic, ultimately by fitting an engine in that body, it will give the essential characteristics of a scooter only and nothing else. So it says that when there is a scooter body, even without the fitment of a engine, still it has to be classified as scooter. The court placed reliance on HSN explanatory note for rule 2A, which states an incomplete or unfinished vehicle. And we have seen plethora of judgments whenever there is an import of parts or import of any particular thing in a CKD or in a SKD format, then this question of classification is always there, because what we have seen that in case a particular chapter or a particular section have two different rate of taxes. Let's say for the complete unit or for a complete block built up unit, you have a CBU, you have a some other rate, and in case you are getting them as a CKD or SKD form or in parts, then you have a some differential rate. So in case that is a lower, then people tend to classify into that parts and making it classify as it is not a complete product or it does not have that essential characteristics. So this is always an question of litigation and question of interpretation. But as per 2A says that if your unfinished product or even unassembled product has the essential characteristics of the finished product, the latest example will be the Segway. We all know that Segway is a simple machine which only need a simple screwdriver to fit that complete machine, and it will be a runnable or a movable Segway. But when it is imported, it is always a CKD format. So they may classify it under a part or some other chapter headings. But then they have decided, or the custom has said that no, it just need a simple process by virtue of which that whole this whole unassembled will be a particular product and which has the essential characteristics of that finished product. So it will be classified under Segway only and not under any other part. Shivaji works also, it was held that the functional test is the correct text for the determining the character of a product. That is the primary function or the essential characteristics. So it has to be seen by way of this essential characteristics only. There is a famous judgment for BMW where it was decided that when a car was imported in a CKD format and it was not having the steering and the seats. So they said no, it does not, it cannot be called as car. So there are both side judgments. With some of them are in favor of SSC, some of them are against the SSC. But this judgment says that when it is in a form where they don't have that essential characteristics, then you cannot classify it under the finished product list. So there they have said that because that body or that structure of car did not had the steering and the seats attached to it, so it is not having the essential characteristics of a car. And similarly, in a judgment, we have seen that refrigerator, when without the compressor, it is just like a body, just like a normal wardrobe, which for which you can use, you can have of any use apart from that refrigeration use, because the condenser or the compressor is not fitted to that. So these are the various methodology by which we can always take care while we are getting the classification issues, when the essential characteristics has to be tested in case of a unfinished or an unassembled product. So there are many judgments when goods is in CKD or SKD condition, as I have already mentioned, but there are a few other judgments which we have quoted over here in scan machineries. The assessee cleared the machinery in phased manner, but paid the entire duty at the time of first clearance itself. So as a trade practice, the clearance was against a single purchase order. It was held that the clearance is of a single machine and not part of machine. That may be having this may be having the scenario that the consignment may be coming in pieces or in different stages of time, but still as they have charged it as a complete machine and not as a part of machine. So this is the judgment which we have seen. the individual. Observe that the expression as from different unit at different point of time, and then duty cannot be so these are various issues or these are various conditions that you are and people have managed the thing that they may have their consignment coming at different point of time at different ports also, so that this time lag difference can be shown that yes, this is not a complete product or this is not so that the lower duty can be claimed. So all these things are there which the but as part, then it has to be treated as part only, then you cannot apply the any other test over that. Then comes your rule 2b. So 2a was for unfinished and unassembled product. It is for the mixtures or combination. Any reference in a heading to a material or substance shall be taken to include a reference to mixture or combination of that material or substance with other material or substance. Any reference of good of a given material or substance shall be taken to include a reference to good consisting wholly or partly of such substance. Let's say if in a chapter note, in a particular chapter, if there is a mention of some particular chapter iron, form of iron, there is some other heading also mentioned in any other chapters. So what they are saying is that if there is a mention of some particular product or a material in any chapter, then you cannot apply the any other test over that. Material care of not just
So there is some technical issue at ma'am side, so I'll continue from here. So there is a rule 2B which speaks about classification of mixture and or combinations. So if it speaks as any reference in a heading to a material or substance shall be taken to include references or to mixtures or combination of that material or substance with other materials or substances. Any reference to goods of a given material or substance shall be taken to include a reference to goods consisting, because if you read all these the wording of these rules, these are quite confusing sometimes. So basically this is what this is about. If there is a combination of certain material and substances, so how will you take the classification of any particular product? So you will take the essential characteristic of that particular item which is a part of that mixture. Now there is a problem, and I would say there is a conflict when we talk about this particular rule, that is a mixture or combination containing, if it is containing more than one material, so there will always be a confusion that there will be always confusion regarding the in what classification it should get included. Apart from that, there may be a possibility that two descriptions can also be possible. So yes, ma'am, continue.
Yeah, thank you, Navjot. And I'm so sorry for this technical glitch. So as he has said that in case there is a mixture or a combination, then yes, two classification can be possible. So again, by virtue of rule of interpretation in the matter of Dhariwal Industries, it was decided that SSC was a manufacturer of Calcutta Meetha Pan, which was a mixture of various items, but the major ingredient or the primary ingredient was being pan leaf. So the product contained 70% of dry dates and a mixture of spices and sweetener. So it was held that the classification as per Rule 2B and 3B ought to be under fruit, nut, and other edible parts under chapters 2008 and not as pan masala. So it may look like a pan masala, it may have pan in it, but still it was not a pan masala because it has the major ingredient as nut, that is date. So it was classified under chapter 20 and under the entry number 2008. 3A. 3A is again a very, very important rule of interpretation because it very precisely says that prefer the specific entry over the journal entry. In case your product is described particularly, or it has a specific mention, or it has a specific entry, as Navjot in his presentation has clearly given an example of groundnut. So that means there is a specified entry. So then whenever there is a specified entry, there is no requirement to go for a journal entry because always specific will prevail over the journal. So 3A says when there is a specific entry, then you have to only look for that specific entry and you cannot opt for the journal entry. So when by application of Rule 2B or any other reason, good are prima facie classifiable under two or more headings, classification shall be effected as follows. A. The heading which provide the most specific description shall be preferred to heading providing a more general description. However, when two or more heading search refers to part only of the material or substance contained in a mixed or composite good, or to part only of the item in a set put up for retail sale, those heading are to be regarded as equally specific in relation to those goods, even if one of them gives a more complete or precise description of the goods. We will see example of this in the next slide. Appropriately covered under sanitary ware, that is 324, which has sanitary ware and parts thereof, which is a specific description, rather than putting it under a general description of household articles of iron and steel. That is again classified under chapter 73 only, but chapter 73 entry number 23 or subheading 23. So they said no. When there is a specific entry mentioned, then you have to classify your product under the specific entry and rather than opting for a journal entry. Similarly, in case of Dunlop India Limited, it was held that vinyl pyridine latex is classifiable as a as raw rubber under item number 39 of Indian Tariff Act 1934, and not a specific list, always resort to that specific entry rather than going for a residual entry. In case of, again, in case of VAT versus Taneja Mills, it was decided that there was a certain ambiguity, that there was certain religious picture banned under propagation. The mere fact that the religious pictures are mounted or framed is a matter of irrelevance. I may have framed in whatever way I want, but my basic intent is those pictures and not the frame. So also the cost of the item is again irrelevant. Frames are nothing more than the accessories for selling the item and promoting the item. So again, it will be classified under the item number
So as ma'am was saying that then in case in this particular case, what was the issue that
The use of gold-plated nickel foil would add ambience to the picture and thereby increase its value in the aesthetic sense for a man of religious sentiments and their theist views only, nothing more than that. Then comes 3B, essential characters text for mixture or composite good. Mixture composite goods containing of different material is or made up of different components and good put up in set for retail sale, which cannot be classified by reference to A, shall be classified if they consisted of the material or the component which give them the essential character insofar as the criteria is applicable. So that means what we have to see, in case there is a mixture or a composite good, then we have to see which of them is giving more essential characteristics to that particular good. Let's say there is an alloy where there is a 30% of iron and 70% of nickel. So obviously that particular good has to be classified under the nickel category, because the component is the more major part is of nickel, and again whatever the major characteristics is being given to that good is given by nickel and not by iron. So this way we have to see that what is the composition, which product is giving its the essential characteristics, and accordingly we have to classify the good. We'll take some examples. In case of CCE versus Inarco, it was said that where the floor tiles were made with a mixture of PVC and some limestone, so then they will be classified as an article of stone, because the major component is the limestone, not the polyvinyl. So there may be because polyvinyl is always on a higher rate of tariff, but you cannot give them the essential characteristic, because polyvinyl is only used for as a binding agent for binding the limestone and giving that a particular structure. But ultimately the major ingredient in this whole product is limestone. So again it will be classified under the article of stone and cement. Similarly, in case of Xerox India, it was decided there was a dispute pertaining to the classification of digital printer, where they should be classified with several functions like fax, copier, etc. Reliance was placed again on 3B, essential character, that what they are used for. So 3B to classify the item under digital printer, laser printer, what is the essential function for that particular is? The printing function. So it will be classified under printer. Again, in the matter of Samsung India, it was held that the mobile phone with zoom cameras, they may have a very high pixel cameras, they may have a very high quality of cameras, but that will not become a camera. What is the basic use of that product is it is used as a mobile phone. So again, its primary function is mobile phone, so it will be classified as mobile phone itself. Similarly, in case of Ramchandra Subharaj versus A.V. Venkateshwaram, a fountain pen with gold nibs, caps, or even we have have seen diamond studded, when you find that whenever you are buying a it will be classified as pound mills. It was decided so, but you cannot say that all these products will be classified as shirts. No, because all these products are capable of being sold separately and they have separate identity also. So they will be classified as separate items only, and they will be classified as separate items only, and not as a single product as shirt. So we have to take into I'm so sorry today. I don't know what is happening again and again. Okay. So we have seen in 3A and 3B, now comes 3C. If both are specific, then letter the better. That means if suppose my product, when a good cannot be classified in reference to 3A and 3B, there is still some ambiguity left out, then they shall be classified under the heading which is coming later on. That means which is coming later on in the number. So they both have the equal merit, but which occurs last in numerical order will be given the preference, and it will be classified accordingly to that number, to that heading only. In case of Mahindra and Mahindra, it was held that tariff entry 8703 and 8704 are equally applicable to a good, to a particular good which was under the question. So now this is because it is equally classifiable under both the tariff heading. So as per the general rule of interpretation, we have to classify on the heading which is coming later part in order. So the good was classified under 8704. Let's suppose we are not able to classify a particular good by way of rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 also. Then comes rule 4. What does it say? It says akin goods, rule 4 states goods which cannot be classified in accordance with the above rule, then they have to be classified under the heading appropriate to the goods to which they are more akin, to which they are more relatable. In case of CCE versus KWH heliplastic, it was observed that in order to resolve the persisting classification dispute, the relationship of good under dispute vis-a-vis description of the good under the disputed heading should be ascertained. Let's say there is a dispute whether this good should be falling under this category or not. Then we have to see that yes, what description that particular heading is giving and what description your good is having. That we have seen classification of sanitizer. There was whole lot of ambiguity. whether it has to be classified as a disinfectant or it has to be classified as medicament. And we have seen plethora of opinion were floating around, but again, until unless it has been settled down by the apex court, we are all just assuming, but still there are various description and confusion between the heading. So similarly, so you have to see what is your description, whether your sanitizer is made up of alcohol, so whether it has to be classified under a particular chapter or no, whether it has been classified as a medicament, so then it has to be classified under a particular chapter which is taking care of medicaments and drugs. So accordingly, what is the description of your good, which to which it relates so closely or more closely, there only you have to classify your particular product or good. As in the example given by Navjot, I just remember because there was nuts. So which nuts? Groundnut specified. Any other nut, then any other nut, again any other. They had a further bifurcation. So you have to see under which category your good is falling, or your good are more inclined towards the description of that particular heading or subheading. There only you have to make your goods classify. Once you are settled down with the classification of your particular good, then comes the classification of packing container and packing material. So there are two aspects. One is there may be some certain cases which are only made suitable, or they are only suitable for a particular product. Let's take an example. When we go and buy a guitar, we always get a guitar cover also, or there are guitar boxes also. So that guitar box is particularly in the shape of guitar only, and that can be used only for storing the guitar for the safety of your guitar. So all these kind of product are the storage boxes. They are particularly used for a particular product. So A point says camera cases, musical instrument cases, gun cases, drawing instrument cases, necklace cases, and similarly any other container. Special, they have a specific or a special shape or fitted to contain a specific article or set of articles suitable for long-term use and presented with that article for which they are intended to be used shall be classified with such article only when of a kind normally sold therewith. Like when you are buying a guitar, you may buy a guitar box also. So that has to be classified along with the guitar only. Camera case along with the camera. Jewelry box along with the particular neck piece or whatever you are buying. So it will be attached to that particular piece only, because it gives the essential character. You cannot, I mean, I don't say that you cannot put anything in that guitar box, but the specific use or the essential characteristics for that particular box is to store guitar. So subject to the provision of A above, packing material and packing container presented with the goods therein shall be classified as per their book, as per their goods, if they are of kind normally used for the packing of such goods. However, this provision does not apply when such packing goods are meant for any kind of packing and they are certainly or clearly suitable for repetitive use. Then you cannot say that these are to be attached to that particular product. A camera, but it is he's just giving you a wooden box where you can store anything, where you can just put that camera also. So then you cannot say that that wooden box has to be classified along with that camera only, because that is a different box and it is for the purpose of storing, and it is, I mean, good for repetitive use also. So we have to see what kind of box it is and what kind of usage it is, and is it a box or having a specific use, or it is a normal box that is used for storage. Goods are comparable at the same level only. That means if I am having an question or ambiguity, then they have to be compared at the level of either heading or subheading or residual entry. You cannot say one, you cannot compare two things at different levels. So whatever you want to compare, they have to be compared at same level only. So for legal purposes, the classification of goods in a subheading of a heading shall be determined along according to the term of those subheading or any related subheading notes. So heading or subheading along with subheading, further bifurcation accordingly, that has to be only compared. So and mutandis mutandis, these also apply to the rules also. On understanding that only subheading at the same level are comparable, for the purpose of this rule, the relative section and chapter notes also apply unless the unless context otherwise requires. let's say if I'm comparing two things, but that chapter note itself exclude that particular good from that particular chapter, then I cannot compare. So I have to see the chapter notes, the section note, and then only if they both are in alignment, then only I can compare the goods. Let's say that if one of my section is excluding that particular good, then though the description may fit with one of the chapter note or with one of the chapter or subheading, but I cannot compare because section itself is excluding that particular from that particular section. So we have to see whether first of all those two section under which I'm trying to classify, they both are including my product or no. In case they are including, then I have to see whether that chapter where I'm trying to compare, they both are including it or not, and then only I can compare it further. In case of a needle roller bearing, it was held that ball bearing form part of a machine. Hence, a part of ball bearing is also a part of machine. When I'm comparing two parts, so when I'm comparing a part of machine, let's say ball bearing is a part of machine. So then any part that is used in that ball bearing will also be falling under the definition of part of ball bearing itself. So when two parts are being classified, so a part or a sub part that has to be merged in that part itself. In Nalanda manufacturing, it was it was similarly held that a part of a refill is also a part of ballpoint pen. When I'm comparing two parts, let's say a ball pen, so I'm comparing parts of ball pen, a nib, a cap, the outer body. So when I'm bifurcating it into parts, so if I'm comparing parts, so if I'm comparing something, so if refill is also to be held as a part, or even the nib point is also held to be a part only. So this is the way we have to classify, or this is the way we have to compare them. Okay. Then comes the trade or common parlance understanding, how that particular product is being accepted, or how that particular product has been advertised, or how a common man, or what is the market presence of that particular product is taken as. This also affects your classification. Take a simple example of a prickly heat powder. We all are aware in this scorching summers, we all must be using it also. So, in the case of Muller and Philip, it was decided that prickly heat powder is a medicament. Medicament means some substance that are used as a medicine. They are not medicine, but the substance are used as a medicine. So, as per common parlance, it is not treated as a normal talcum powder. It is used as a medicament, which shows that it has some medicinal quantity, some medicinal ingredient in it, or some medicinal qualities in it that is suitable for some kind of treatment. So, and though for the purpose of Drug Act and Sales Tax Act, the product has been treated as a drug. Drug means medicine, medicine for a particular ailment. There is a difference between drug and medicament, but though it has been classified because their Drug Act has their own different nomenclatures, and they have their own different requirement, but still it was said that prickly heat is not a normal powder. It is termed, it is used, it has to be understood as medicament. So this was the distinction, and in case of Muller and Philip, it was decided that prickly heat powder is a medicament. Similarly, in case of CCE versus Connaught Plaza restaurants, it was held that soft serve, in common name, if I say Connaught Plaza restaurant is Nerola's, it was held that soft serve, in the absence of the definition, it can be construed as per the common parlance. Soft serve is softy. We don't call it a ice cream. Softy is different from ice cream. So they says because it is not defined as ice cream, so it has to be construed as per common parlance. Even if the provision of Food Adulteration Act, it may not fall within the meaning of ice cream. What matters is the way the consumer perceives that product. So softy, I mean, that cone and that soft serve that comes out from the machine, ultimately it is not described under ice cream, but still what is the basic characteristics of that particular product, it is in no difference from the ice cream. So it has to be classified as ice cream only, though they were contesting no, it is not an ice cream, it is a soft serve. However, it is to be noted that the trade parlance to be examined only if the tariff entry is ambiguous. In case there is no ambiguity within the tariff entry, then there is no requirement to understand the market adaptation or the market acceptance of that particular product or the trade parlance. Only when there is an ambiguity, then we have to go for this resort. As it was held in nylon synthetic fibers versus UI. Chapter notes, section slash chapter notes prevail over trade parlance. Obviously, they have some. I mean, both the things we have seen, as Navjot has dealt in his PPT, that they have some kind of value, and some says no, they are only for the explanation purpose. So the classification and the custom tariff is not dependent on trade parlance when the parameter are precisely laid down in the tariff itself. In the description of the section note, chapter note, read with the interpretational rule, all of which have statutory force. So they are having some statutory guidance force. In CCE versus Wood Polymers Limited, it was held that the classification should be done as per the rule of interpretation contained in the tariff and not as per the trade parlance or commercial understanding. So you have to give weightage to the chapter notes and section notes, despite the fact they may be in contradiction to the trade parlance, but because they have some kind of statutory force, they are still binding. So you have to apply as per the section or chapter notes. However, this is so if the rule of interpretation give correct and conclusive answers, otherwise one has to look at trade parlance. So that we have already dealt. In case there is no ambiguity, then they have to be there. But still, in case there are still some kind of ambiguity, but still the better resort will always be section or chapter notes itself. OK Play India Limited, again in this case law, it was laid down. The parameters for classification of goods are as under. No single universal test can be applied for correct classification. Obviously, there cannot be a blanket formula. Different things while before finalizing any classification. So there cannot be a static parameter for correct classification. HSN, along with the explanatory notes, provide a safe guide for interpretation of an entry. Equal importance to be given to rules of interpretation of excise tariff also, because they are also on the same parameters. Functional utility, design, shape, predominance, usage has to have also got to be taken into account while determining the classification of an item. The aforesaid aids and assistance are more important than name used in trade or common parlance in the matter of correct classification. Some product may be known as some other product, or they may be perceived as some different product, but when you go and see their description, they may be described or they may be defined into some different under different category. But you have to see where they have been defined as per the section or as per the chapter, heading or subheading. Similarly, in case of Badruddin Jivani, it was held that if the tariff entry is used in a scientific or a technical sense, or where there is a conflict between the entries in the tariff, common parlance will not prevail, because they are specific things. They are used in some specific kind, so you cannot just see that what this B is commonly used for. There may be some product which have a specific mention in some of the chapters, but that may be used in very different way. That may not be used as it has been described, or that the usage may or the end use may be altogether different. But still, you have to resort to the in case of some scientific or technical sense, if there is some kind of usage or mention of that particular entry, then you have to resort to that entry itself. In the case of carrier aircon, that end use to which product is put is not determinative of its classification. That is not the only result. That is not the only resort. That is not the end point. That may be a use or that may be an aid, but you cannot only result or you cannot only go to that resort only. So this was decided in carrier aircon. Then, for example, Excel stud will be classifiable as screw, even if they are used on motor vehicle, as held in quality sales corporation. So they may have a end use may be altogether different, but Excel studs will be classified as screws only. However, the exception to this norm is where classification is as per the function of the relevant goods. In case end use is a relevant factor to determine the classification, then you have to obviously you have to go to the end use classification only, because in case you are not able to find out anything and that is the most relevant factor, that because of that only you will be able to decide under which category it has to be put in, then you have to go and you have to use the end use also. For example, it was held that the plastic pipes and plastic pipe fittings, the joints, manufactured with the intention of being used as a part of irrigation system only, should be classified as a part of irrigation system and not as a plastic pipe. There may be certain other examples also when there is a particular component or a particular part which has a fixed usage. That means they are used only for the particular product, or they are used or they have a restricted use, then obviously you have to classify them as per their end use only. But in case that is a normal, it would have been a normal pipe and a normal fitting that we see in our daily routine life, so then it would have been classified under pipes and fittings only. But when they have restricted the end use, that means this pipe, this fitting is only suitable for the usage under irrigation system only, then you have to see under which category you have to classify them, because here end use is a major thing to be on a major end use is having a major impact on the deciding or on the deciding the HSN classification of that particular product. Then other factors are resort to residuary entry. In case I'm not able to find anything, then there's always a residuary entry where you can always classify. I'll just give you an example. Latest example was insole. Insole has been classified. With the insole means the layer that you see in your shoes. Insole has been classified. Outer sole again has been classified, but insole has been classified with a restriction, either of plastic or something they have mentioned. But insole of a particular or a woven material or a knitted material is not classified. So then it has to be classified under the residual entry only. At times you are not able to understand the description, then you may take the help of dictionary. Meaning under other acts or standard, they can also be taken help from. How that particular product is being advertised or what is the product literature, that also at times comes to rescue when you are not able to understand the description or the usage of that particular product. I'll just give an example. 2 3 days back, somebody called me that I'm going to mix rice, this wheat flour and sugar. So what will be my product? I said only mixing. No, no, no. We will be roasting the wheat flour and then adding the sugar. So I said, in common language, if I see when I roast normal wheat flour and I add sugar, it becomes a third product which is eligible to be consumed in that manner only. So neither it is in wheat flour nor it has the content of a sugar. It is becoming a new product only. So accordingly you have to classify it. So you have to see that how that product has been advertised, or what is the use of that product, or what is the literature that will be attached to that product. That will also help you in deciding your HSN classification. Obviously, importance of expert opinion is always there, and other evidentiary values, because at times we have seen that we are not able to classify certain product and we may be requiring the help of experts, or we may require some kind of technical testing help also, some certification also is required. So you have to see, like if I see the yarn, so there are certain categories of yarn that are being classified, but there are certain other categories of yarns also which are not classified. So fully drawn yarn, partially drawn yarn. So how to differentiate between these two types of yarn? So for that you need some technical report only. So from some technical laboratories report, testing report has to be attached, so that, because by naked eye you cannot make a difference between a fully drawn yarn or a partial drawn yarn. They will look similar to you. So when these kind of products are involved, so you need to have an expert opinion, as well as you need to have some other evidentiary uh, documents attached to them, so that you can suffice why you are classifying this particular product under this particular entry. Importance of ICI specification, so that will again help you that how that product has to be understood. At times, reference from the finance minister's speech when they are making some adjustments or some amendment in the tariff heading. So even that will also be helpful, that what is the intent, why they wanted to shift that particular product from one heading to another heading. So these may also come to your help. So there is an judgment of Gujarat High Court in case of XJ Industries, where they have taken the reference. So therefore, the speech of finance minister can be helpful in understanding the classification. that as it was held in this particular case law. Importance of trade notice and circulars, again they will help you. Provisions at the relevant time, what was the provisions at that particular point of time, that today in today's pandemic situation we are saying there are so many changes that are coming up in the rate schedule. At times the product is either prone to higher rate of taxes when we don't want to get it exported, or in case we want to have bulk imports, then we are also reducing the tariff on that particular product. So what is the provision, or what are the provision at that particular relevant time, that also has to be taken care of. So beneficial classification, in case you are able to classify your product in a lower tariff heading, so that may also help you in deciding, I mean, again, as per your description only, that where you want to classify your product. So I'll request Navjot also to kindly come on screen, because this is one aspect which is really affecting many assessees nowadays, and we are seeing that we are flooded with the notices and what should I say, communications from the department with respect to classification. And you will see that in whole of our presentation, we have not mentioned even a single double AR, because we are of the opinion that they are not giving a, I mean, yes, we are speaking this on a public platform, but still, whatever double AR we have seen in these time period, we have seen that they are pro revenue only, and they are not even giving the, they are not even doing that proper due diligence before that product has been classified under a particular heading. The latest example is like flavored milk. So just by adding some kind of flavor, are the basic essential characteristics is being changed or no? I mean, all these factors are not being decided just because they are deciding that okay, this pertains to a higher this pertains to a higher tariff heading, and the description can be fit in some other or residual category. So they are doing so. So we are seeing that classification has always been in dispute, and I think this dispute only settled down once it reaches the highest court. Before that, though, it is always a question of interpretation only and not nothing else than that. So, and it takes almost hell lot of time, and there is an involvement of amount of, money is being involved, because either the assessee is paying a higher rate of tax, or if even if he's paying lower rate of tax, then he's bound to pay under protest, and all these things are attached to that. So, classification is not just a very simple thing. It is a very important aspect, because not just the right or wrong classification is involved, but yes, your working capital, blockage of working capital, question of litigation, penalties, duties, fines, all things are attached to that. So it has to be really, really taken care of. And now with the change, that earlier under GST you were only required to have 4 digit, but now they have made it mandatory 6 digit and even 8 digit. And GST does not have an 8 digit classification, 6 digit classification. So that means you have to resort to the custom tariff only. So now it is, as of now, you are interpreting as per your understanding, but tomorrow department will be coming to you with their own understanding, and there will be always a dispute. We always say that we are on seesaw. At times, either I am on the higher side, at times department will be on the higher side, and we have to maintain an equilibrium. So this is really a very, very important aspect. And before going or changing your classification, or in case of any ambiguity, I think we should take the help of an expert. We should take the other mechanism to get resort to your issues, not just running for the double AR, because they are not coming in your favor, and they are not also giving you a correct classification. Over to you, Navjot. What you have to say in this thing?
Yeah, ma'am, very rightly said, because in previous times, if you have seen the advanced authority or advanced rulings, so most of the rulings, yes, because the problem with the structure as well, because they are not having any judicial member as well with them, so they are just pro revenue in nature. Now comes to how to handle these notices, or like how to handle this issue. So as you rightly said, because sometimes chemicals are involved, we chartered are tend to give the opinions in a legal form, but whenever any chemical is involved, then there should be a proper, I would say, technical report to be drawn from an expert, like what sort of product you are actually supplying. Because if you're talking from a GST perspective, which is completely different from custom in respect of collection and levy. In GST, once you supply the goods, You mention your HSN in the invoice, you mention your HSN in your HSN summary in GSTR 1 as well. So it's kind of you are self-certifying that yes, you have opted this HSN, but later on, if
Admission,
yes, it's kind of
kind of
admission.
admission. Yes.
Now later on, if department comes to you, then people are clueless. Like just happened last year in the like if you have seen hand sanitizers, like people were charging 12% interest rate, and then department, especially DGST department send notices for 18% tax rates. So there is obviously there will be ambiguity when they will see a volume. Like these days they are like after rice shellers, because from a rice sheller there are multiple products which are coming out from their factory. So they are like trying to like put those all those put they're focusing on classification issues, because once they send you a notice related to classification, like after that it would be very difficult for a businessman to classify under that HSN in which he was earlier doing, because then officer will keep on sending him notices like after our showcase notice you are still following that HSN code, because in GST you really don't know how they are going to proceed with this. So the correct way to do is this, that you make a HSN list and you get it kind of I would say not certify exactly, but you kindly get it checked from a
At
consultant.
least vetted it from some consultant who has some understanding, so that he can understand your product. He can suggest you a better classification or better place to classify it in case there is a possibility. Because yes, there is lot of ambiguity even in classification, because each and every product cannot be summarized in that SETA also. Though they
Right.
have tried to cover everything, but still, as I've given you an example of insole only, I couldn't lay my hand on that insole made up of fabric. So there may be a product, such similar product, or there may be some new, if in case there is a new product, or a first of its kind. So then definitely it will not be having any place in the setup. So you
Yeah.
have to see. So yes,
Yes.
very correctly mentioned that you at least go and get your HSN vetted. And now I think it is a high time, because now they have shifted to 6 digit and 8 digit. So not very easy to shift from 4 digit of GST to 6 or 8 digit of custom.
Right. They're just trying to confuse them between 6 and 8 digits. They
Correct,
just
correct,
want to
correct.
they just want to get the exact idea that how a particular industry is treating a particular product
As you
in
said,
what
rice,
perspective.
yes, rice industry. So whatever waste or byproduct is coming out, which is used as an animal feeder, which is classified in chapter 23, they have a specific entry. Whatever is coming out from these kind of cereals or grains, it has to be classified into this particular entry. But they are not ready to accept that classification. They are always challenging that classification, and they want to classify it in the some other heading where there is some higher rate of taxes applicable to them.
Right. Right. So that's it from our side, guys. Apart from it, if you have any confusion or if you're dealing with any sort of issue related to classification, you can very well reach us. This is the contact information is on your screen.
Okay, there are some questions. Send PPT. What is your take on this issue? There is a dispute in classification on bituminous coal and stream coal
Yes,
as imported.
actually, this classification issue, if I remember, I just read a case law of ascertain back in 2014. Adani Power was importing coal, and they were saying that it's a stream coal. I'm not having the exact idea from where the dispute started, but I think that matter is still pending. I guess there is no finality on the issue, because industry says that it's a bituminous coal because there is a tax rate on that, but stream coal, on that there is exemption. So
Yeah,
that's a
because
problem.
of some lead content or some other content in the other
Yes.
variety of the coal.
Yes.
So
No,
yes, they are.
so Sabya Sachi, it totally depends what sort of coal it is. So there are certain ingredients to these kind of coal, these industrial coal. So one have to see like what sort of coal it is, because department
Yeah.
also they will be also coming up with the technical reports from Ministry of Coal.
Yes,
So
yes.
it is very important to note like what sort for what purpose you imported that particular coal, or like how it is.
Rajesh ji has asked, has the issue on classification of sanitizers been finally resolved or it is still pending litigation? It has been suppressed as of now, taking into the cognizance of this pandemic corona. It will emerge once again once the things are a bit normalized and once these sanitizers are not in demand.
Hmm. Yes.
So it will be. So any other questions? I don't think so.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think
We can conclude.
and sincere apologies for the technical glitch because I don't know what was happening today. Maybe because of the load shedding that is happening in my area. So again, there was a breakage in the presentation. So I'm really apologizing for the same. But things are not in our control nowadays.
Yeah.
So thank you so
So
much, ConsultEase, and thank you, Navjot, for giving this wonderful presentation and explaining the provision in such a nice and liquid manner. And I hope I was able to aid to your explanation by adding the rules of interpretation to that.
always great to hear, ma'am. Learning from you only.
Thank you so much. So
Okay.
I think we should switch on or switch off now.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Okay,
Thank you, Shikha. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thanks to ConsultEase.
okay.